Welcome back, you maniacs. We've got a great week 6 ahead, some good matchups. Going to be tough to predict this week. Could be a turning point as a lot of teams are bunched up. So let's start out with one that's not tough to predict. My team, bend the knee versus RB's rush the ball, question mark. That would, of course, be Jared. And yes, some running backs actually do rush the ball, just not on your team, Jared. This is the same story with Jared every week. He needs Brady and Gronk, Team Bronk, to go off to have any shot whatsoever. He's going to need about 60 from those two, which they might very well get against the Jets. The Jets are putrid, very easy matchup. I actually think Brady and Gronk are a pretty major concern this week. Parker and Landry, however, are absolutely of no concern at all. The Dolphins are going to try and run the ball 40 times this week. There's Jay Cutler. There's no reason to have him throw the football. No reason at all. And you're facing a high-powered Atlanta Falcons offense. You don't want any part of this. Get those two out of your lineup, you dope. They're not going to do anything. What's his name? Cohen for the Bears, absolutely unplayable. You don't know what his role is going to be week to week. He's facing a tough matchup this week, absolutely unplayable. Deontay Foreman, of course, is the backup to Lamar Miller, and he'll likely see, 6 to 8 carries, but he's got good matchup against the Browns. But, I mean, come on, man. You're starting 2 backup running backs. Drew Brees at home versus the Lions, who just got shredded by Cam Newton. Yeah, I like that one. That's probably going to be pretty good. I think Nuke Hopkins. I like the entire Texans offense this week. Nuke Hopkins is going to be dominant once again. He's very likely in the end zone at least one time. This is the week, however, that Jay Ajayi gets it going. My bold prediction here is that Jay Ajayi outscores Jared's 2 starting running backs combined. And I know maybe that's not that bold of a prediction considering who Jared's starting at running back. But you know what? Let me take it one step further. He will outscore both his starting running backs and his flex combined, Jay Ajayi. And he could probably do that with like 8 to 9 points, just for the record. Of course, I'm going to win. It's time for you to bend the knee, Jared. I'm moving to 6-0, and there's not really anything you can do to stop it. So there you go. I get the W. Move on to 6-0. Pocahontas versus OJ's Revenge. So we have Reese versus Chris Mancusi. Reese Pocahontas Morgan versus Chris Snooki Mancusi. How is Amari Cooper still on a team and not in free agency? This is embarrassing at this point. The guy's awful. Devontae Freeman, however, is likely to have a good day against the Dolphins. You should have moved him by now for a king's ransom, but I understand Jared's pretty unreasonable, but you should be shopping him around a little bit. Extremely risky to play Mariota on Monday night, however. He's questionable, potential game time decision. You have another great option at quarterback on your bench with Phillip Rivers playing the putrid Raiders defense. My advice would be don't take the chance. Put Rivers in there. Play it safe. You don't need to go with Mariota this week. Will Fuller, 4 touchdowns on 6 receptions. Can that continue? I do love the Texans offense this week, and I think Fuller gets into the end zone once again. He's very likely to get another touchdown. Now, he's probably not going to do a ton else, but I think he's a pretty safe bet for a splash. Minnesota D against the Packers is absolutely not a usable option. Pick up that phone. Give me a call about the Jaguars. I'll cut you a deal, Reese. Bold prediction in this game. Doug Martin, in a tough matchup at Arizona, is going to go for 100 yards and a score. He's going to get it done. The guy's running angry. Love the guy, and it's going to lead Reese to the W this week. Reese Pocahontas Morgan with the W. So Pack Attack versus Big Brown and It Hurts. So Tony Sr. versus John. You got, of course, the highlight of this matchup is Aaron Rodgers versus Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan, of course, much easier matchup, but I don't think Aaron Rodgers cares. Aaron Rodgers is matchup proof, and he's on fire right now. Antonio Brown, I think, is going to appear very human once again against the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't expect him to get into the end zone. I think the Steelers are going to have a really hard time this week, really hard time. I was in Kansas City a few weeks ago, and that is not an easy place to play on the road. And I expect Roethlisberger, with his confidence issues, it's not a good spot, not a good spot at all. Chris Hogan is a legitimate fantasy stud purely because Tom Brady is a racist. Tom Brady is obviously a racist because his best weapon, other than Gronk, of course, is Brandon Cooks. And he's just force-feeding Chris Hogan targets, even though he's dropping passes. He's not making plays after the catch. He's just force-feeding him the ball. So until Tom Brady gets over his racism, Chris Hogan's a fantasy stud. Bold prediction for John: Kareem Hunt is kept out of the end zone for the third straight week. I think Alex Smith has another good game. Tyreek Hill will not be kept out of the end zone. Tyreek Hill is going to splash the end zone twice this week. So kind of a part one and part two of my bold prediction. Tyreek Hill gets into the end zone twice. Kareem Hunt gets into the end zone 0 times for the third straight week. T.Y. Hilton is basically superhuman. It doesn't matter who you put back there. The guy's going to put up numbers. He's going to get the yards. Love Mark Ingram with AP having left town. I think it affects Mark Ingram a lot more than it affects Alvin Kamara because AP wasn't really going into that third down pass receiving role that Kamara was in. He was more taking a few touches away from Ingram. So if you give Ingram those 5 or 6 extra carries on top, now you're looking at a guy that's getting the ball 15 to 16 times a week. That's very productive with those touches. So I think Ingram goes right back to being what he was last year, which was a pretty good fantasy option. You absolutely must change your flex. You cannot trust Carlos Hyde, not for anything. You can't trust him, can't play him. Bold prediction on your side here: Ravens D goes for less than 4 points against the Bears' young upstart, Mitch Trubisky, who's going to be playing with all sorts of confidence this week. I love Mitch Trubisky. I love the Bears. Do not like defenses against the Bears. Winner of this match anyway, in the upset of the week, Pack Attack takes it down. John moves to 3-3, mediocre. That's what you're going to get from John the rest of the season. He'll finish somewhere around 500. So there you go. Follow the Buzzards versus Cheesehead. We've got, look, Tony, it's time to move on from Kelvin Benjamin. His ceiling is 11 points. His absolute best he can possibly do, 11 points. You're talking about a guy that Cam Newton's gone nuclear the last 2 weeks, and he scored 11 points. Cam Newton's not going to keep going nuclear. So what happens when he's not throwing for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns? Kelvin Benjamin's going to go with 40 yards and no score. You should have been shopping him already, but, that's just my take. Love Lamar Miller and the entire Texans offense, as I've said. I think Lamar Miller is going to have a big week at home against the Browns, a kind of a get-right situation for Lamar Miller. It's also a get-right game for Gillislee. He'll get into the end zone at least once against the Jets. Emmanuel Sanders is an absolutely awful flex against the Giants, but you really have no other choice. You have to roll with him because you didn't look at bye weeks. Carson Palmer should do well at home against a depleted Bucs defense. And here's a point for fantasy, by the way, in our league. Whenever Jared is starting a defense in fantasy, make sure to scoop up the opposing team's quarterback and throw him in there because Jared has no clue what he's doing selecting a defense. So Palmer should have an absolute field day. On to the other side of things. Cam Newton's going to come crashing back down to earth on a short week versus Philly. Melvin Gordon, however, is not going to come crashing back down. He is going to do it once again, have another big week. Terrell Pryor is my bold prediction, though. Terrell Pryor is the highest scoring wideout in this matchup. I think he gets 110-plus yards and 2 touchdowns. He's going to splash the end zone twice. I like Terrell Pryor this week. I think he has a big week, and I think that leads Jason to the W. So I'm going to pick Jason for the win. So on to the final matchup. We have Joe versus Steve. And, you know, I'm not even going to give your team names because, frankly, neither one of you deserves it. Steve, I got to address this for a second. He shot down a trade with me earlier today of Matt Stafford and Brandon Cooks. Now, mind you, Matt Stafford is playing the Saints and Brandon Cooks is playing the Jets. And Steve's 0-5. He needs a win. Shot down an offer of those two for Michael Thomas and a throwaway. I mean, this is why you're 0-5, Steve. You basically won't do a trade unless it's to help my dad's team. And it's gotten to the point where we really have to start thinking this is collusion at this point. When you're turning down those kind of offers and you're accepting Jacquizz Rodgers for DeMarco Murray from somebody else, or you know, the other ridiculous trade. We've talked about it enough. We don't need to get into it. But basically, you're either colluding or you're the worst player in the history of fantasy, and you don't even know when somebody's trying to help you out. So that being said, on to the matchup. Jaron Brown, going to have a great game, I think, against the Niners. C.J. Anderson, he sucks. Listen carefully, though, Steve. No Giant is playable. None. Not Wayne Gallman. Not if Tiki Barber himself was playing in his prime would he be playable in a Sunday night game at Denver coming off of a bye week. They're the best defense in football. They're the toughest against the run. And the Giants don't have any receiving threats. They have nothing left. It's going to be a bloodbath. You don't want any part of it. It's going to be 3 and out after 3 and out after 3 and out, mixed in with the occasional interception. You don't want any part of this. It's a stupid play. I don't know what you're thinking. Get Gallman out of your lineup. On to Joe's team. Kirk Cousins is the play this week, Joe, and that's because Travis Kelce is in concussion protocol. If Travis Kelce does wind up playing, I would lean towards keep him with Alex Smith. Just keep your studs in there. But without Kelce, Alex Smith loses a lot of value, so I'd probably roll with Cousins. Julio Jones is your version of C.J. Anderson. He's just kind of meh. He's a bigger name than he actually is a fantasy play. Todd Gurley at Jacksonville. Expect another letdown, Joe. You should be actively shopping this guy right now, and 6 weeks from now, you're going to look back and say, man, I should have traded him. Bold prediction, Todd Gurley is the lowest scoring running back in this matchup, not named Wayne Gallman. I would just say he'd be the lowest scoring running back in this matchup if Steve wasn't a total idiot, but I don't think Steve's going to bench Gallman despite it being one of the worst matchups possible. And because Steve is so bad at fantasy, I expect Joe gets the win here. I can't predict anything but Joe because it's basically a walkthrough playing Steve. So Joe gets the win in what is likely to be the lowest scoring matchup of the week. So there you go. There's your matchup previews. Best of luck to everybody, and I will see you guys for the recap on Tuesday, as always.